Shalom. Shalom, everybody. Are you there? Anybody in today? Hope so. Shalom, people. You got in? I'm just checking for the thumbs up or hello, hello. How you doing? Oh, Vince. Shalom, darling. How you doing? So good to see you here. Andrew. Shalom. Are you Mr. Barbarian, Andrew? I think you are. We used to call him Mr. Barbarian. Thinking because he's from Scotland, and the Romans used to call them the barbarians. Shalom from Mississippi. Shalom, shalom, darling. Sherry, good morning. Excellent. People are joining us in. Very good. How are you guys? Yeah. They got the Scottish flag, you see. The New Testament actually calls when we are in Christ, there's no Greeks, no Jews, no barbarians, no Scythians. This is actually Colossians 3. And the barbarians were called barbarians by the Romans. Whoever the Romans could not actually defeat, they called them the barbarians. And the Romans never were able to defeat the Scottish people. The Scots were in the mountains and they were ferocious. So this is why they were called the barbarians. So when Andrew and his wife was actually in the tour, we called them Mr. and Mrs. Barbarian. It was awesome. Sharon, you're doing good, very good. I'm glad. I'm glad. Excellent. So we'll let people join in. Please make sure you have your resources open with you. Okay. Good morning from Maryland, Rachel. Yes, Andrew. So the Germanic tribes actually also were called the barbarians. Um, for a time, the Gauls were called the barbarians until Julius Caesar actually managed to conquer it in 47, 48 BC, something like that. Gaul is where France is. Anyway, Shalom Ron, Shalom Adila. Yes, so here the barbarians. I think the Mongols were called the barbarians as well by the Romans, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Anyway, we're talking about the land of Israel. We're talking about deception number 2, so you need to open the resources on deception number 2. And the situation here with the coronavirus is not good. We had 1,000 people getting infected yesterday, something like that. And we're only very small here in Israel. So for us, 1,000 people is a lot of people. So it's not good, not good, but we have a very low death rate here in Israel because of all the technological, medical advances that we have here. So it's pretty good. So even if you get infected, but people are very frightened. They're not getting out of their houses. You don't see many people in the mall. You don't see many people in the gym. All kinds of things like that. Angelica, shalom, darling. And Ernie, and we used to call him Ernie the Muppet. We had all kinds of names going on in the tours. I miss the tours, guys. I miss the tours. I can't wait until all this finishes and we can go back to normal life. What do you think? We are going to have normal life or not? Uh, Ernie from Rescue, California. Good morning, and from Atlanta, Angelica. Excellent, excellent. So it's 2 o'clock now. I'm going to wait for a few more minutes for people to get in. And shalom from Ohio. Shalom, Heidi. Shalom, shalom. Excellent. Anybody else is in? Phil from Ohio. Good morning. Shalom, Lori. Shalom, Connie. Shalom, Cliff. Excellent. People are joining. You know, yesterday I thought that for some reason beyond my imagination, I thought that yesterday was the lesson. So I started yesterday at 2 and there was nobody online and I'm thinking, what's going on? And then somebody said, Sonia, it's not today, it's tomorrow. Oh my God. So anyway, Gloria, shalom from Japan. Shalom, darling. Good morning, Cliff. Lori, shalom from Ronoconi. Shalom from the Philippines. Hello, guys. So good to see you here. Yeah. So anyway, life. Angelica. Yes, I know it was funny yesterday. I was, you know, there's nobody. They have abandoned me. This I was thinking. And then a few people that saw me online, they said, Sonia, what are you doing here? It's tomorrow. You know, I'm too keen. I'm too keen. Shalom, Roxanne from Sydney. Shalom, darling. Awesome. Sherry. Sherry, was you who told me it's tomorrow, right? Or it was another Sherry? I can't remember. Anyway, it was hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. Wrong day. Hi, Sonia. Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, darling. Should we wait a few more minutes? What do you think, guys? Okay, so have your resources ready. I don't know if we're going to be able to finish today everything because, you know, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is an ongoing conflict and there's also new things. Yeah, it was you, Sherry. Sonia, it says Tuesday. I was convinced it was yesterday. Anyway, yeah. So, yeah, so by the way, this is what I'm going to share with you today is part of the book that I have written. It's already finished. I finished writing it. It's going to Roxanne is lost as well. It's all this coronavirus that we are inside the house and we lose track of time, you know. Anyway, so the book is already finished, but it's gone to editing now. So as soon as the editing is finished, it's going to be available. What we're going to talk about is only a small part of that book, okay? And it's about a lie, a deception that is actually done by the United Nations and by the Palestinians, and we're going to talk about that in detail. Shalom, Connie from the Philippines. Adila, shalom. Shalom, shalom. Okay, so let's start, guys. Please open the resources. and we're going to start praying. If you're there, please give me the thumbs up. You know what the title is yet? Yes, the title is Contested Ownership of Israel. That means that the world is actually saying to Israel that we don't have the right to be here. And it's a lie, it's a deception. They call this occupied territories. It's just absolute nonsense, yeah? And again, I'm fighting against the lie, you know, that is nonsense. This is, Israel is a legal country. And we'll talk about that in detail. Okay, so you have the resources open, okay, guys? Sue, shalom, darling. Alison, darling. and the rest of you that are online. Okay, excellent. So you got the resources, okay? You open up, and what I put there is what the Muslim world is saying, what the United Nations is saying, that Israel is the occupier, the aggressors. They portray the Palestinians as the poor Palestinians, and they are the oppressed one according to their understanding, yes? And the Israelis are the oppressors, the conquerors, they do evil against the Palestinians and so on, and it's all utter nonsense. And you know, the media actually is propagating this. Why is this happening? And I'm talking without praying first. I'm getting to the subject and I forget to pray. Let's pray a minute and then we'll continue, okay? אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק, אלוהי יעקב, אנו מודים לך, אבא, שאתה איתנו, שאתה מברך אותנו. אני מבקשת בשם ישוע קודשך, שאתה תברך את האנשים האלה שבאו לשמוע, שאתה תיתן להם את המידע, שהם ידעו מה הולך פה בארץ. בשם ישוע משיחנו, אמן ואמן. Okay. So, so the ONU, the United Nations, the Palestinian Authority, the Arab nations are actually portraying Israel in a bad way. Why are they doing this? Because throughout history, the Arab nations and the Palestinians have tried to kick Israel out of here. They used to say that they're going to kick us into the sea. That's what they were saying. Okay, but what happened was that because you know there were 8 different wars against Israel in 72 years of his becoming a nation, and in those 8 wars, the Arab nations did not manage to kick out the Jews out of here. And because they did not manage to kick out the Jews out of here, now the battle has transformed itself into a political media-led battle to delegitimize Israel as a nation, okay? So that is the issue here. What they're trying to do politically is to delegitimize Israel, portray Israel as a monster, make Israel look bad internationally, do lots of propaganda against Israel. And of course, you have the BDS movement, which is called divestment and boycott against against the people of Israel, who's led by former terrorists, former Palestinian terrorists, and they are actually pushing internationally everything that you can think of against Israel. And this is why, how do you say, anti-Semitism is rising, anti-Israeli sentiment is rising. Sorry. And you know, and also replacement theology. Remember that last lesson we talked about replacement theology, and replacement theology is in the church, yeah. So part of the worldwide church believes in replacement theology, so that this belief that God have rejected the Jewish people. Now, this replacement theology doesn't just touch the Christian church, it also touched the Muslim world. The Muslims also believe that God rejected the Jewish people, and now they are the ones, they are the people of God, and they are everything. Okay? So here we have replacement theology rising both in the Christian world and in the Muslim world. We have anti-Israelism rising in the United Nations, amongst the Arab nations. Anti-Semitism in the Arab nations is very, very high. To the levels, according to the research that's been done recently, to the levels of the Holocaust, of the time of the Holocaust. Yeah. So it's pretty bad, pretty bad. Everything is pretty bad for the state of Israel internationally, politically, okay? And now the Jewish people want to annex part of the West Bank. So there's whole plava about this against the state of Israel. And we're going to look at that as well in detail, okay? Can you follow me, everybody? Yeah? Okay, so let's go to the resources then. So the lie is these Israelis occupied territories. And this is one of the greatest lies that is circulating around the world as if it was true. The purpose is the delegitimation of the state of Israel, making it illegal. This lie originally started with the Palestinian Muslims. However, it is spreading around the globe, so much so that the Palestinians are portrayed as the victims and the Israelis are the aggressors, the occupiers, okay? The church needs to know that this is not based on historical facts, but is a deception that will deceive, even if possible, the elect, okay? This is a deception. And let me tell you that worldwide, your country will have to decide whether they are on the side of Israel and support the state of Israel, or they are on the side of the Arab world and supports this anti-Israel sentiment. Yeah? And remember that whoever blesses Israel will be blessed, and whoever curses Israel will be cursed. Yeah? So you need to pray for your country that they're actually following the right way and they don't go against Israel. Okay? This is actually pretty important in my opinion. All right? Now, I have put in the resources some questions, and I want you to work with me. I want you to write down or type it in your computer. You need to put enable editing, okay? And you'll be able to type this up. What is a deception? Who is the father of all deception? What is truth? And how can you determine that something is truth? Okay, so I would like you to please, I'm going to give you 2 minutes, okay? Write it out, type it, write it to me here as well so that I see your answers. I'd like you to tell me what is a deception? Who is the father of deception? What is truth, and how can you determine something is truth? Can you write it down for me as well? Okay, and we're going to talk about it. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Okay, it's 14:14 here, so 2 minutes. I'm giving you 2 minutes. Okay, so if you can answer me the first one, what is a deception? And we talked about this last lesson. Okay, what is a deception? Yeah, Anybody can tell me what is a deception? Okay, a deception is a lie. Absolutely. Absolutely. What else is a deception? What else is a deception? Anybody else? Very good, Elizabeth. That's part of it. Anything else? Satan is the father of deception. Absolutely. Okay. Deception is a lie. Anything else? Anything else? Deception is a hoax. Very good. A fallacy. An illusion. Very good. That's excellent, Alison. An illusion. Okay. Is replacement theology. Very good. Causing someone to accept something as truth and is actually really false. Okay? So when the world is actually saying occupied territories, when it's referring to Israel, it's actually false. And we're going to look at that. We're going to look at that, okay? It's a deception. And it is a deception that is being worldwide accepted as if it was truth, okay? You have it in Wikipedia, you have it everywhere, as if actually it's a factual truth and it's nonsense, okay? That is, yeah, a twisting of the truth, Andrew. Very good, okay? Deceiving. And Satan, of course, is the father of deception, of lies, okay? So you pretend it's truth, but you're actually telling a lie. And people believe the lie because, you know, if you repeat it enough, people would think that that is actually truth and is actually a lie. And this is why we need to find out exactly what is truth, okay? And Alison put here, God is truth. Truth is actually conformity with reality, okay? Very good. And indisputable fact, okay? So it can be an historical fact. It can be a biblical fact if the Bible says so, yeah? Truth is what is real, Sherry, very good, based on the word of God. Exactly. Yeah. So remember that the word of God is actually a line. It's actually telling us what is truth and what is not true. Okay. Truth is found in scripture. This is the measuring rod. Very good, Alison. Very good. Okay. So here you have what is true. And how can we measure truth? With the Word of God, with historical facts, by seeing actually what happens on the ground. And the media not always tell us what is truth. Why they do not tell us what is truth? Because one, perhaps they don't know. They're just repeating what they heard. But they don't really go into the sources to find out if what they are actually saying is truth. And this is why it's so important that we as believers of Yeshua follow what is truth and seek God to find out what is truth. Yeah? Because we are in a very deceiving world. Can you see that? Okay. So we figured this one out. Okay, well done, everybody. And now I'm going to give you historical facts regarding the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. The historical facts that's going to help you to understand what's going on here on the ground. First of all, we know, and I said it many times, we know that God is bringing the Jewish people from around the globe to the promised land. We know that God is doing this. This is actually the greatest miracle on the face of the earth. This is the purpose of God, and it's what's happening at the moment. Okay? And this is, I mentioned this many times in my lessons. You can go and read it again if you want afterwards. Ezekiel 37 from verse 21 to 24. Yeah, there is a plan of God. I will gather them from all the nations of the world. I will bring them into their own land. I will make them a nation. A nation was created on the 14th of May, 1948. For what purpose? For them to know Yeshua. So we know that God is bringing the Jewish people from all around the world to the land of Israel, and millions of people have been on the move for the past 150 years to come to Israel. For what purpose? For them to know Yeshua. Okay, that's his purpose. And then Yeshua is going to come back to this earth. Okay? Now, the Palestinians do not understand this, okay? They do not believe in this. They do not care about this, okay? So this is one of the reasons why we have a conflict between the Palestinians and the Jewish people that are returning to the Promised Land, okay? Now, who are the Palestinians? Why are they called Palestinians, okay? Now, this area was called Palestine from 135 AD to 1948. For more than 1,900 years, this country was called Palestine. But it doesn't mean that the Palestinians were in control of this land. This was not the case. There was one empire after another in control of Palestine. Okay? It was called Palestine, but it was not the Palestinians that were controlling this land. Okay? So from 135 AD, Adrian decided to change the name of this place from Judea, this is the Roman period, from Judea to Palestine, in memory of the Philistines who were the enemies of the Jewish people. Why? Because Hadrian hated the Jews with a vengeance, and he wanted to remember the enemies of the Jews, the Philistines. However, by the 1st century, 2nd century AD, the Philistines did not exist anymore. The Philistines ceased to be a recognizable ethnic group by the 5th century BC. That means that the Philistines did not exist anymore. Nevertheless, the Romans in 135 AD, they changed the name of this country from Judea to Palestine in memory of the Philistines. Okay? Now, it was changed to Palestine. So there were the Romans, then there were the Byzantines, then came the early Muslim period, which is Muslims from the Middle East that came and took control of this area. In the Middle Ages came the Crusaders here, who were European Christians. And then came the Mamluks. These are actually Muslims from Egypt. And then they came the Ottomans, who were Turks, okay? And then started the British Empire. And in 1948, Israel started as a nation. So that means in that period of time that this land was called Palestine, it was called Palestine, but the Palestinians, the people that lived in the place, did not control the land ever. That meant that the land was never theirs. Can you see this? It was always controlled by somebody else. So how can they say that Israel stole the land if the land never belonged to them in the first place? Can you see this? Okay? So here is, can you see the line? Can you see this? Okay, guys? Amazing, right? Amazing. Okay, so the Romans actually changed the name. Who are the Palestinians then? The Palestinians are Arab Muslims that came into the land from different periods of time from the Middle East, came in as slaves, came in as mercenaries of the different empires that came into the land, and they stayed here and they became to be known as Palestinians, okay? And they were called Palestinians until the Declaration of Independence of Israel in 1948, when this land passed to be from Palestine to Israel. David Ben-Gurion said in the Constitution, in the drafted Constitution in 1948, and this land will be called Israel. This is what he said, okay? And from then on, this land is called Israel from 1948 onwards, okay? So here you have, in point number 3, you have all the different empires that were in control of the land, okay, with the dates and everything, so you can actually understand. Now, the Ottomans controlled this land until the collapse of the Ottoman Empire from 1916, 1917, the Ottoman Empire collapses. In 1917, the British come up with a document that is called the Balfour Declaration. And in this Balfour Declaration, they say that Palestine should be for the Jewish people, to create a national home for the Jewish people. What do the British, what do the world consider Palestine to be? Okay, and I want you to have a look at the map that actually put it there. Okay, it's called the Mandate for Palestine. And what it is actually, what was Palestine in the eyes of the world at the time? What is today Israel and Jordan together? Look at the size of that map. That was Palestine in 1922. Okay? So 1917, the Balfour Declaration gets done. In 1922, the League of Nations decide to divide the Middle East into sections like a cake, okay? Palestine was to be in the hands of the British Mandate, and other parts, like, for example, the North, Syria, was actually to be part of the French Mandate, and Iraq as well, part of the French Mandate, okay? So Britain and France actually received the mandate. What was the mandate? The mandate had two purposes, both for the French and for the British. This is the League of Nations in 1922 that they say like this: you need to prepare the locals for self-rule. That was one of the mandates, okay? And the second mandate that the British actually received was to prepare the land for the Jewish people, to make this land a national home for the Jewish people. Can you see that the British actually have a contradictory mandate from the League of Nations? One, to prepare the people for self-rule, and the second one is to give this land to the Jewish people for the national home of the Jewish people, which is actually a contradiction because these two communities never go on together with each other. Okay? So this is the mandate that the British received, okay? Now you can see the land. You can see that it was actually Israel and what is today Jordan, okay? And then you have the Hussein Mahon correspondence that it was not Palestinians, but Hussein was a chieftain, if you like, of the Arab Muslims in what we call today Jordan, who was in the territory of Palestine. Hussein actually writes these letters to McMahon, and I can't pronounce it. I'm sure Andrew can pronounce it better. They were actually talking with each other. Why? Because the British said to Hussein, if you help us to get rid of the Ottoman Empire from the Middle East, we will give you part of Palestine on the east of the Jordan River. Okay? So here is Hussein and this Arab Muslim army of his helping the British in the First World War to get rid of the Ottomans from the area. And because Hussein did so, the British actually gave part of the land that is in yellow in the map to Hussein and the whole area of Palestine on the east of the Jordan River to these Palestinians. Can you see that? Am I explaining it right? Give me the thumbs up if you understand. Give me the thumbs up if you understand what I'm saying. Yeah? Okay, so the British then are giving part of, I want to see that people understand what I'm saying. Okay, very good. I got the thumbs up. All right. So the British actually have a double mandate. One to prepare people for self-rule, one to give it to the Jewish nation. Now, they have a letter. And what's happening in this letter? They give part of the land, huge chunk of the land, to Hussein and to the Arab Muslims. So you could say here, already in 1922, the Palestinians that live on what today we call Jordan, the Palestinians already receive more than half of the land of Palestine. Can you see this? Okay? So on the west side of the Jordan River should have been just for the nation of Israel. Can you see this? For the Jewish people. Yeah? Because they had these two things to do. They had to prepare the people for self-rule, and they had to create a national home for the Jewish people. They had these two things. So they gave part of the land to the Muslims on the Jordan side. So this side should be for the national home of the Jewish people. Did the Jewish people stole the land here? No. It was given to them by the United Nations. It was decided by the League of Nations. Can you see this? Right? Am I right or am I wrong? What do you think? Yeah? This is, all this stealing the land, I mean, just unbelievable, okay? Anyway, so here it is, okay? So the Palestinians receive a huge chunk of the land that is in yellow, okay? Now, what's happening? And it is actually written in the situation on the ground, okay? The Jewish people are escaping the persecutions in Europe. There are more than, where is my cup? Ah, there it is. There are more than 300 persecutions against the Jewish people in the 1900s before the Holocaust ever happened. More than 300 persecutions. The Jewish people were escaping from all over the world and landing into the Promised Land. In the Promised Land, you have the Palestinians, and you have hundreds of thousands of Jews coming in. Okay, it's the time for the Jewish people to come in. The Palestinians don't understand what's going on. They say to the British, no, we want this land. It got nothing to do with them, with the Jews. The Jews are Russians, are Polish, are Germans. They don't belong here. This is what the Palestinians are saying. Okay? And the Palestinians start rioting against the Jewish immigration under the British mandate. One riot after another. They're murdering Jewish people all over the place. And the British want to stop the riots. So what do? They promise the Palestinians on the west side of the Jordan River that this land belongs to them as well. So not only did they give them the east side of the Jordan River, now they're giving them the west side of the Jordan River. So they're giving the Palestinians the west side of the Jordan River, and also they're giving the Jewish people, preparing the Jewish people for self-rule. Can you see this? Okay? So here we have a conflict of interest between the Palestinians that are on the ground and between the Jewish people that are here as well. And they're coming by the hundreds of thousands of them. But remember, it's God's will, okay? The time has come, and he's going to move the Jewish people, however that might be, okay? And by the hundreds of thousands of them come. So for example, at the end of the 1800s, beginning of the 1900s, 75,000 Russian Jews came in. Then came in the Polish Jews, the European Jews, the Eastern European Jews, about 250,000 of them. Then came the Fifth Aliyah, which is actually the German Jews, from 133 to 139 AD, before the Second World War started. 250,000 Jews land in the land of Israel. The Lord was moving them, bringing them in, but the Palestinians did not like it. And because the Palestinians did not like it, they started rioting, murdering people, and then the British go and promise them that they will have the west side of the Jordan River as well, which is disastrous, okay? Absolutely disastrous, because they're promising two different things to two different groups. They're promising the same land to two different groups, okay? And here we have really the beginning of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, yeah? Okay, now, so what happens? The Holocaust happened, 1945. The Second World War finishes in 1945. The world wakes up to the realization that the Germans, the Nazi Germans, have killed 6 million Jews. 6 million Jews. You cannot imagine the shock, the horror of the whole world of what just happened, okay? People were, how can I say, horrified, astonished, couldn't believe what has happened. As the Jewish people were coming in, they were buying land. And I would like you to have a look at the map. And you can see the blue area was actually bought by the Jewish people before the Second World War started. Okay? The coastal plain, you can see the blue area, the coastal plain next to the Mediterranean Sea was bought by one man called Edmund Rothschild. You probably know about the Rothschild family, a very famous banking family in Europe. And Edmund Rothschild was the French side of this banking family. And he bought the land for the Russian Jews that were escaping Russia at the end of the 1800s, beginning of the 1900s. Then in the 1920s, the GNF, the Jewish National Fund, buys the whole of the Jezreel Valley, the blue area that is in the north, where Galilee is, okay? That is bought by the Jewish National Fund, okay? 60,000 acres of land. And it was given to the Jews that were escaping from Eastern Europe and from Poland. And then in 1946, the United Nations actually gives the Negev, the south part of the land, to the Jewish people because Israel was actually cultivating the desert. That's the desert area. And there was nobody there. So the United Nations decides to give to the Jewish people. Can you see that? Okay. So what the Jewish people were doing, they were buying the land. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Did the Jewish people steal the land? Even though this is actually an inheritance from God to the Jewish people, the Jewish people still didn't take it by force. They bought the land. Can you see this? Have we stolen the land? No. Have we stolen the land from the beginning? No. The United Nations, the League of Nations, assigned this land to the Jewish people. Then the Jewish people start buying the land. From whom do they buy the land? From absentee Arab landowners. That means that these landowners had the land as a form of investment, but were not living in it. They were just looking after, well, they were not even looking after it. The land was in a terrible condition. Yeah. And the Jewish people start buying it and restoring it. Yeah. So have we stolen the land? No. Can you see this? Isn't that amazing? Okay. Now, the Holocaust happened during the Second World War. From 1939 to 1945, we have the Second World War. 6 million Jews died. After that, we have 500,000 Jewish refugees in Europe. After the Holocaust, Holocaust survivors that had nowhere to go. Nobody wanted them. Nobody wanted them. And would you want them? They're half mad. They just went through the Holocaust. They lost the family. They lost the property. They lost their sanity. They have nothing on them. And would you want the Jewish people? The only country that accepted Jewish people after the Second World War to help them was the Philippines. That's the only country. The rest of the world closed their doors. Okay? Golda Meir was actually, she later became the Prime Minister of Israel, but at the time she actually said, she was in the United Nations when the nations were deliberating whether to have the Jewish people or not. And Golda Meir said, I saw nation after nation stand up giving reasons why they wouldn't have the Jews. Yeah? Who wanted the Jews? The settlement, the Jewish settlement here in Israel wanted the Jews, wanted to help them. But the British would not let the refugees to come into the land. Why? Because if they let the Jewish refugees to come into the land, they will have a riot from the Muslims. Can you see this? Yeah, that's pretty bad, right? So we have an issue here. The Jewish people decide to fight the British, decide to cause havoc to the British, to allow the Jewish immigration in. And the British had enough. In 1947, the British said to the United Nations, if these Jews want to kill each other, let them kill each other. We are out of here. And they abandoned the place. In 1947, also the United Nations gather and they decide on the partition of the land, and you can actually see the map there on the partition of the land. This is the UN partition of the land of 1947. And in that partition of the land, the United Nations says like this: whatever land is in the hands of the Jewish people is going to stay in the hands of the Jewish people. And whatever land is in the hands of the Muslims, the land will stay in the hands of the Muslims. Can you see this? Okay? And this is what happens. The Jewish people were very happy because they said, we're going to bring our own people back, the refugees. We're going to declare independence. And they said to the United Nations, yes, thank you very much. We accept the partition of the land. What do the Palestinians say? No way, Jose. All of this land belonged to us. It got nothing to do with the Jews. What? Did the land ever belong to them? Ever? Yeah? This is unbelievable. Can you see this? Okay? So it is actually a deception. And what do the Muslims say? We do not accept the partition of the land. All of this belonged to us. It got nothing to do with the Jews. And a war breaks out in 1948. And this is what we call the Independence War of 1948. On the 14th of May 1948, Israel declares its independence. And the very next day, 5 nations attack Israel at the same time. The 5 nations that surround us: Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, and Iraq. Okay? They come and attack Israel. We are 1 day old. 1 day old. Disastrous. Okay? We don't have armaments. We stole 2 tanks from the British. We had 2 tanks. We had no artillery. We had no army, nothing. And we have 5 fully equipped, armed countries that come to attack Israel. And we won the war. How did we win the war? Because God wanted us to win it. We didn't have anything to fight. But let me tell you some of the miracles that happened. And we will have to do this lesson in 2 parts, guys, because I'm not going to be able to get through all of it. Some of the miracles that happened, let me tell you. The kibbutz that a lot later I was born, okay? I was born in 1964. But this kibbutz in 1948 was on the border. Kibbutz Harel is called, and the army that was recently formed in the newly created Jewish state phones up the kibbutz and he says, look, the Jordanian army is coming to attack you. You need to protect the kibbutz during the night, and tomorrow morning will come and kick the Jordanians out. The kibbutz, the settlement, the Jewish settlement, did not have weapons. And what do? They had one pistol and one Uzi to protect 150 people. How do you protect the kibbutz with that when the Jordanian army is coming to attack? So what do? They make a tank out of cardboard box. They paint it in black and they go around the kibbutz all night with the people of the kibbutz inside this cardboard box tank, pushing it around the kibbutz on the border of it. And the Jordanians who were down below, they thought that the kibbutz was armed to its teeth. Didn't attack it through the night. And the next morning came the Israeli army and expelled them all out. Can you see this? So without weapons, just by pretending to have weapons, did they actually manage to keep their property? Okay? So why am I saying that the Jewish people actually won the war? Because all the areas that were assigned by the United Nations to the Jewish people stay in the hands of the Jews. And all the areas that were assigned by the United Nations, and you can actually see in brown on the map, was overrun, overtaken by the countries that came to attack Israel. Can you see this? Okay? So why did Israel win the war? Because we kept to the land that was assigned to us. Did we steal the land? No. Who was stealing the land here? The countries that came to attack us. They took over the land that was assigned to the Palestinians. They were stealing the land. Now you can say, wow. Can you see this, guys? Can you see this? Okay? So what happens next? Okay? We have several problems with these nations that surrounding us. Okay? In the very north, we have the Syrians in the Golan Heights. The Syrians are on high ground. And in 1965 to 1967, the Syrians were actually bombarding Israel from above. Okay, they were in the Golan Heights, they were bombarding the Israeli settlements down below. And the settlements down below were actually underground, okay? It was a terrible situation. They lived underground for 2 years, okay? And you can actually see that I put the resources, in the resources I put where you can actually go and read afterwards about this, okay? So you don't just take my word for it, you can go and read it, okay? Shalom Koshishi, good to see you here, darling. Okay, and then in Gaza, the Egyptians actually had the Gaza Strip. You can see the Gaza Strip on the southwest of the country, next to the Mediterranean Sea. You see a strip that is in yellow, that in brown. This is actually the Gaza Strip. Okay, now the Egyptians were controlling there and they were bombarding Israel from there. And also the Egyptians, what they did was to close the Strait of Tiran. Now the Strait of Tiran is actually international waters and it is illegal to close the Strait of Tiran. And what do? The Egyptians? They close the Strait of Tiran. Israel said to them, if you close it, it's a declaration of war. And what do? They close the Strait of Tiran, okay? Then the Jordanians who were in the West Bank, the brown section in the middle, this is where the Jordanians actually took over, and the Jordanians were infiltrating into mainland Israel nearly every single day from 1948 to 1967. Terrorists were infiltrating, were raping women, murdering people inside the houses. And you can see the reference there, and you will see the list of the atrocities that the Jordanians were doing across to mainland Israel. And Israel said like this, enough is enough. If we cannot protect our own people, what on earth are we doing here? This is what Israel said. And in 1967, Israel decides to kick these nations out of the land. They kick the Syrians out of the Golan Heights, they kick the Jordanians out of the West Bank, and they kick the Egyptians out of Gaza in 6 days. This was the greatest embarrassment for the Arab world ever. That this nation that at the time didn't have more than 4 million people was kicking out the giants around them, okay, in 6 days. So Israel took over the Golan Heights, took over the Jordan, and took over Gaza and the Sinai to the other side of the Suez Canal in 6 days. Now, Israel said to the Arab League of Nations, it says like this, if you sign a peace treaty with us, we will return all the land to you immediately. The Arab League gathered in Sudan in 1967, and they came up with the famous 3 no's. It said, no recognition of Israel, no negotiation, and no peace. Can Israel return the land to their enemies? No, because you're going to have the same problem. If they refuse to sign a peace treaty with us, then we cannot return the land. Do you agree with me? What will happen if you do return the land? They will come back and do the same thing. So Israel said, no, thank you very much. If you don't sign a peace treaty with us, we will not return the land to you. Okay? And it's already 1 hour that we've been talking. Few more minutes, okay? Few more minutes. Okay. So, not only that, guys, according to international law of warfare, according to international law of warfare, a nation have the right to take over lands if that means the safety of their own citizens. So according to international law of warfare, Israel have all the rights of the world to actually take over the land to protect their own borders. Can you see this? Okay? And we will have to leave it there. We will continue next lesson. Okay, guys? We will continue with this. Okay? Have the Jewish people steal the land from the Palestinians? No. We tried to come to an agreement with them. With the Muslim world, we tried to make an agreement with them. They didn't want it. Yeah? The Palestinians still, until today, they reject the state of Israel. They reject to acknowledge that the state of Israel is here. they rejected every attempt at making a peace treaty with the Palestinians. And we tried 8 times to make a peace treaty with the Palestinians. And every single time they have rejected it. Have we stolen the land? No. We have no choice. We cannot do anything else. Can you see this, guys? Okay. We will continue with next lesson. All right. Because it's too much to fit in just 1 hour. All right, guys. So God bless you, everybody. If you have a question, please write it down. And also, this is going to be part of my book. Okay, guys, when it comes out, another few months, I would imagine, and it will be available for everybody. Okay. Any questions of what I've talked about? Any questions? Yes, Heidi. This is my heart desire, that people know the truth about Israel. Okay. Yes, Vince. See you next week, darling. And Ali, I haven't been able to read the messages that you sent me, but I will read it later on. Okay. May the Lord bless you guys. I will give you the Aaronic blessing in Hebrew. Yevarechecha Adonai ve'ishmarecha, Ya'ir Adonai panav elecha v'ichunecha, ve'yasim lechem shalom. Shalom, shalom. So we have the other section next lesson, okay? Bye-bye. God bless you, everybody. God bless. Bye-bye.